Hello, thank you for allowing me to share with you what I'm going through and also some observations since I was diagnosed a couple of years ago. My name is Stan Williams, and it's a real pleasure to be with you and to share with you. Certainly I know the remarkable work that you do for MDA, and I know the remarkable work you do every day, day in and day out. And it's my pleasure to share with you. In August of 2015, when my granddaughter was visiting our home, I was thrilled to see her, and I ran down the front steps of my house and I twisted my ankle, and my wife rushed me to the hospital thinking it was broken. And it was not broken, but it never healed. For some reason, I was never able to pick up my foot when I walked after that. And I finally went to the neurologist in February 2016, and they did some tests on me. And at the end of the test, my neurologist from Fort Wayne, Indiana, said that she was going to refer me for additional tests. And she said that she wanted to rule out any neuromuscular disorders. Well, my father had Parkinson's, so I wanted to know right away what she was thinking of. I was wondering if perhaps my issue was that she was looking at was Parkinson's. Well, she said, I asked, what are you looking for? What are you trying to rule out? And she said, well, I want to rule out any neuromuscular disorders specifically. I'm wondering if you have ALS. Well, I knew what ALS was. I worked in a large retirement community with a 200-bed nursing home. I'd seen people come in. I met people who had ALS, and I certainly knew what it was. So my response was, well, okay, let's get started. Well, she didn't know if I really understood what it was. So she said, well, you know, ALS is fatal. And I said, I know, so let's get started. Well, I went to the IU Neuroscience Center in Indianapolis, and in June 2016, after a whole host of tests, it was definitive ALS. But I was pretty sure before that that's what it was. I was having cramps in my legs and other parts of my body, muscle fasciculations. Have you ever had an eyelid that twitches uncontrollably and suddenly stops? That's a muscle fasciculation. And I was having this all over my legs. I was having them in my arms, in my abdomen. And so I was suspicious that it was ALS before the diagnosis came to me. ALS is called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease, and for unknown reasons, the motor neurons die. And the motor neurons are what control all voluntary muscles. The muscles we need to walk, the muscles we need to wave, the muscles we need for our chest, to breathe, the muscles we need to swallow and to talk. And death of motor neurons first brings muscle weakness, then wasting, then paralysis, and it takes away our ability to speak and to breathe. Death most often comes from suffocation and pneumonia. It's the progression for ALS is purely linear. There's no remission and there's no cure. And now, I'm not sharing this with you so that you'll pity me. On the contrary, I echo what Lou Gehrig said in his last speech to the New York Yankees. I'm the luckiest man in the world. I have 2 incredible sons, daughters-in-law. I have 3 grandchildren, and a wife who can only be described as God's earthly example of grace to me. I have long believed, as Thomas Campbell said in his poem, Hallowed Ground, to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. In other words, if we want our story, our life's story, to live long after we're gone, then we must live a story that is worth sharing generation after generation. In this way, we leave an undying legacy. We live in hearts we leave behind. Now allow me to share a few insights that I've learned in the months since I was diagnosed. First, I've found that my worldview determines my outlook. I'm not the center of the universe. It's not my right to always be happy all the time. Life's challenges shape me and make me stronger if I would respond to the desire to grow from them. Our view of our place in this world determines the way we respond to life's challenges and tragedies. You know, for some reason, I've never asked, why me, God? Well, first of all, I've never seen God as a cosmic control booth operator who decides what child in Africa is going to starve to death and what old bald guy in the U.S. is going to get ALS. That's not the kind of God that I serve. So first of all, I'm not saying, why me, God, because that's not the kind of God that I know. But also, you know better than anyone as a first responder that life's tragedies happen all the time. You respond to them. You try and save people from tragic circumstances. That's part of your job. So you know better than anyone else that awful things happen all over the world all the time. It's gonna happen. So if I were to ask, why me, God? I'd also be asking, why not somebody else? Because it's going to happen, and I can't ask that. Second of all, I've decided that I will define my battles. I won't let my battles define me. You know, a sense of humor is what's helped me get through this. I remember my dad in his battle with Parkinson's. One time he and his friend went to a work day at their church. And my dad suffered from Parkinson's, so his left hand was shaking all the time. And they went to church, and the gentleman met them and said to his friend, well, what are you going to be doing today? And he said, I'll be hanging pictures. And he turned to my dad, and he said, what are you going to be doing? He says, I'm the nail holder. Well, I love that. That's part of his sense of humor, and I got that sense of humor in spite of the difficulties that I have. A friend of mine called me from Athens, Georgia, and he asked how the progression was going in my ALS, and I said, well, it's moving up from my feet and ankles, up my legs, and I'm feeling a tremendous core weakness in my abdomen and in my back, to the point where I lie down and I told him, sit up or roll over. And I said, come to think of it, I'd make a poorly trained dog. And he said, yeah, but at least you can stay. I laughed hysterically over that. So sense of humor is what's helped me get through this. And also my family mantra since I was a child, I've been taught that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. You know, self-pity in our family was only a momentary lapse. It was never allowed to be habitual. I saw in my family, each time they battled a threat to health and life, they would not let challenges to life define their lives. You know, I've lived 60 years, and ALS so far has only been the last 3 of them. My life is far more joyful, far more blessed, far more wonderful than just the last 3 years I've experienced. So I will not let ALS define my life. I may have ALS, but ALS does not have me. And third, and most importantly, we must never let anyone assume that we love them. Let me repeat that. We must never let anyone assume that we love them. You know, Dr. Ira Byock wrote an incredible book, The 4 Most Important Things. And in his observation of people in his practice of hospice care for 30 or more years, he observed that there's 4 things that, if said in a family, often and sincerely, make for a healthy family dynamic. Those 4 things are, please forgive me, I forgive you, thank you, and I love you. You know, I never heard that from my father until he had a life-threatening illness when I was 35 and he was 56. And when he was lying on the gurney in the hospital suffering from subdural hematomas, terrible blood clot between the skull and the brain, he feared that he was dying. So I met him in the emergency room, and with tears streaming down his face, he said, "Please forgive me, Stan, for the times that I've mistreated you. I love you so much." I wept. I told him I loved him. I asked him to forgive me for being a jerk when I was a kid. In the hospital, doctor and the nurses were standing by in quiet tears as we resolved all the pain of my past 35 years. And after that, and for 17 years until he died, we never greeted one another nor parted company without saying, "I love you." I resolved when I had my own family, my sons and my wife would never have to wonder, would never have to assume that I love them. And now, as I reach the final months of my life, there are no more precious words than "I love you." You know, you can never say it too much. We can say it insincerely, but it can never be said too much. You know, I'm in a race. From now until muscle death prohibits me, I will tell stories. I will pass on things which prompt the storytelling. I will write letters to my grandchildren for events such as weddings and graduations. And I will also pass on my legacy in a memoir I'm now writing in a book called Used Car Lot Wisdom. It's the story of growing up working for my dad and grandpa in their small town car lot in Peru, Indiana, and the wit and wisdom and legacy they passed on. I want everyone to know, while I have the strength to talk and to write, that it's not what we do for ourselves that lasts. It's in the story we live each day and the stories others tell about us long after we are gone. Every morning I wake up, I'm reminded that I'm running the last mile in my life's marathon. I wake up with diminished strength each day. Each muscle twitch and cramp reminds me that my muscle strength is diminishing and my life will likely end in a predictable way as determined by this disease, and I'm powerless to do anything about it. So I have an intense urgency to love, live, laugh, share, and leave a legacy that lives in hearts I leave behind. But so should it be with all of us, shouldn't it? Every year, the firefighters of this country raise money for MDA. MDA leads the fight to find cures for and serve people afflicted by over 70 diseases which affect the nervous and muscular systems, including ALS. I join you in that work to find a cure. Last year, I participated in a clinical trial as part of the research into a promising new medication, which is a synthetic copy of material found in beehives. I'm putting skin in the game. I want to go out swinging for the fences in everything I do for my family, friends, and for generations to come. Please know this. Please know this, my friends. Every dollar you raise and every effort you undertake for MDA truly does make a difference. Bless you for what you do as firefighters, as first responders to life-threatening emergencies, and as first responders to life-threatening diseases. Now go and continue to live an inspirational story that will live in hearts you leave behind. Thank you.